we've gotten to close to the end of the class here, and the last thing that we want to talk about is Elastic Beanstalk. Now, I gave you a lot of stuff today about how to create VPCs and then EC2 instances and auto scaling and CloudWatch, all this stuff that went into creating an environment for our application that we could just launch our application into and have it be highly available and auto scaled. Okay. All right, now you can forget all of that because there's a service that does all that. No, I'm just kidding. But there is a service that does all of that, and it's called Elastic Beanstalk. And the purpose of Elastic Beanstalk is to make it easy for developers to be able to use AWS and not have to learn all of that stuff. Now, it does actually let you upload your code and deploy it onto EC2 instances behind an ELB, automatically scaled without you having to have created any of that stuff. All you have to do is write your code and upload it. It also allows you to create new versions of your code, upload the new version, and it will deploy the code onto the running instances. Okay. So with Elastic Beanstalk, you basically create an application. Then you configure multiple environments like staging, production, test, or whatever, and you upload your code and you say which code version of code you want running in the different environments. And you can just basically keep on versioning your code and keep on getting new deployments put out there very, very, very easily. Okay. All right, so it's a pretty straightforward thing, and actually when I see it, you're going to be very impressed when I show it to you. Oh, I should be showing you like this. Sorry about that. It's going to be very impressed when I show it to you. I just want to say that many companies use this for production, and even though it was intended for developers to be able to just launch something, with an auto scaling pretty quickly and easily, it is commonly used for production applications as well. Okay. When you use Elastic Beanstalk, pretty much you're letting AWS do most of the management and configuration for you and everything. So you're really letting AWS do just about everything. It's setting up CloudWatch, all that stuff. If you don't like giving up that much control, then you would want to do all the other stuff that I showed you. You get full control over doing everything the way I showed you as opposed to using Elastic Beanstalk. Also, some security organizations, sometimes the security people in your organizations don't like Elastic Beanstalk because you're relying so heavily on AWS, so sometimes you can't use it for that purpose. But again, there are plenty of full-blown production applications that use Elastic Beanstalk. Okay, so now we can go and show you Elastic Beanstalk and how it can do a lot of the stuff that we just showed you. Okay, now before we go there, notice the auto scaling group that I was waiting on has launched a third instance automatically. Okay, so that's why I said we just needed to wait a few minutes, and then that would show you that that is working. Launched another instance. We go over here, alarm. We can see we've got the high CPU utilization alarm. Okay, all right, let's do the Elastic Beanstalk thing, and then we're actually done for the presentation. Okay, so Elastic Beanstalk, again, we're going to basically just do some very simple things, answer a couple questions, and all this stuff is going to be deployed for us. So I'm going to click on create a new application, right? I'm going to give it an application name, S3 upload demo. Don't need a description, click on next. Right, and I'm going to have a choice here if I want to have a web server environment or a back-end worker environment. Well, I'm going to want a web server environment, so I click on Create Web Server. Here, it's asking me what platform do I want it to install. Well, it already knows web server, so it's going to install that, and I'm going to tell it I want PHP because that's what my application is written in. And I also want it to be load balanced and auto-scaled, so that's perfect. I'll click on Next. Okay. Now here, I'm just going to point to my application in my bucket. I'm going to say this is what I want you to launch for me automatically. Okay. That's the URL. to my application. And I'll leave the rolling deployments and all that stuff set as default. So I'm going to click on next. This is going to be the name of my application. So I'm going to get to it at this URL, make sure it's available. It is. So I'll click on next. Don't need any extra resources. So I'm going to click on next. Okay. Here's the type of instance that I wanted to launch. That don't matter. I'll pick T2 mediums. Okay. Here's the key pair that I want to use to connect to the instances if I want to. Here's my health check URL. I'm going to use the same thing I used before. Better type it properly, it won't work. Right, and what else? That's it, that's good enough for now. Click on next. Don't need any tags. And this is going to set up some default permissions. This first one is for the instance to have its profile so my application can do its stuff. And the service role is for the Elastic Beanstalk to have permissions to be able to launch EC2 instances and auto scaling and ELBs and all that stuff. These default ones are okay for the service. This one, however, I did have to go and add the S3 permissions to it so that my application would be able to access S3. I'm going to click on next, okay, and then launch. Okay, so guess what this is doing? This is going to launch all that stuff, right? You'll see the events right here, right? It's going ahead and start launching some instances and a load balancer, auto scaling, and you'll see all the events down below. And you can see it's going to run this Linux AMI, PHP 7.0. All these things are configurable. Like if you go to configuration, you could change these things. But you know, just sticking with the defaults, it's doing pretty much what I want. Okay, it's setting up auto scaling, doing all that stuff, logging, monitoring, health checks, alarms. It's going to do all of that. Okay, and again, just to see what it's doing, you can just check the events. Okay, it's created the load balancer. Okay, create a security group, auto scaling, launch configuration. This will probably take a couple of minutes. Okay, so while we're waiting on that, let me just see if there's any questions that came in. We could just do our questions at this period. One question that came in is how can we configure Splunk tools and things like that in AWS? Well, basically by installing them on your EC2 instances, you could do that with user data script. You could install, you know, agents, log collection agents and things like that, either with user data scripts, or you could bake them into the AMIs. I always like to bake into AMIs things that I want on every instance. So basically, you create an instance, manually install and configure those things, and then create a custom AMI, and then launch your instances from those custom AMIs. Okay. If you have something like a monitoring service or something like that, then your user data script might have to make some type of post request to do a subscription request to get add your instance to a monitoring group. Okay, all of that can be done, again, with the user data script. You're really not limited what you can do in that user data script. Okay, are there other questions, Rand, while we're waiting here? Anybody else with any more questions? Okay, yeah, go ahead and ask the questions at this point. We have about a half hour left to go. This is launching, and then I'm going to do the summary slides, and then we'll be all done. Okay, you can see it's already added an instance here. Okay, and when this is finished, it'll actually transition to healthy. Okay, so it's still launching. It's just about there, though. It's just about ready to tell me that it's okay. So let's just wait for a few seconds. Notice this URL is already given right here. So I'm going to get set and copy this into a browser, S3 upload demo.env. Right, it's going to be S3 demo.index.php. So I'll have that ready as soon as this tells me it's good to go. Okay, there's the green checkbox. Let's go ahead and see. And there we go. Okay, now that was a lot quicker doing the elastic beanstalk thing. Okay, we had another question. If we want to use a specific AMI, do we need to use the elastic beanstalk with default AMI and then configure and get a separate AMI? So we do need elastic beanstalk with default AMI and then configure and get a separate AMI. No, you may have missed that step. When I created the elastic beanstalk application, the first thing I did was pick my own AMI. My custom AMI. Can you select a specific AMI when starting? Yes. When starting the app, when you build the elastic, when you create the app in Elastic Beanstalk, you pick the AMI. That's correct. That's when you do it. Hold on a second. Actually, let me back off on that before I confuse you. You can do it, but you know what? By default, it does a base AMI, and it downloaded my app. It configures the AMI to match your. All right. So remember when I picked the PHP platform? Okay, that's when it was picking the correct AMI. So it picked the Linux AMI and PHP and stuff like that. It does it all behind the scenes. Now the question is, can you choose your own custom AMI instead of just having it to pick the one according to your choices? The answer is yes. There is actually a YAML file that allows you to do configuration specific things on the instance, instances. Plus you can modify the configuration settings in your configuration here. So if I go over here, right, I can actually pick some stuff here. Let's see what else I can do. But there's actually a file that I can edit and change that. Okay, so I can't show you on here because I didn't upload this from my my desktop. But if you were to let's say if I did this Elastic Beanstalk from my command line, I could create a file that's a config file where I could change anything I want. Okay, so I can customize it to exactly the way I want. But the point of Elastic Beanstalk is that you really don't know what you're doing, so you don't do all those extra things. Okay, but yeah, you can customize it using a YAML file, but you have to be launching it from an EC2 instance, so you have to use the command line to do that. Okay, any other questions?